Happy Sunday, everyone. My name is Kelly Edwards, and we are going to be talking about everyone's favorite topic when you're homeschooling. That weird question, that awkward question that we get about, what about socialization? So we're going to be talking about socialization today, talking about all the things. So go ahead and put into the comments what questions you have about socialization, weird, awkward conversations you've had about socialization, fears you have about this question, comments, stories. We're going to kind of unpack it here with Liana Francis. And let's see if we can get Liana up here. Hold on. It's having trouble. Okay, there you are. Hi, Liana. And
Hello, how's it going?
good. We're also going to have Teresa join us today. Teresa, if you can send me a request, that usually works better because I don't know why with the invitations when I send things out. So I see that you're here, Teresa. So we're going to get going with socialization. How are you? How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it was so great. We worked really hard to do a little bit less for Thanksgiving this year, which
Nice. That's
worked
awesome.
out really well. So we did just one gathering. We kind of had a calm morning. I leveled my insanity and didn't make a million things. So it was good.
So did you host?
No, we went to my in-laws' house.
Okay.
But we have like a collection of like mostly vegan folks at the party, but then there's also people that eat meat, and so there's like multiple.
Uh-oh,
Oh, you froze,
the
Liana.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Okay, Liana, see if you can come back. But while Liana works on that, you can still see me, right?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can. Hi.
So welcome, Teresa. Thank you for
Thanks.
joining us.
Just
We're
trying my hair.
we're so excited to have you for this
Hi.
conversation. While Liana goes and comes back, why don't you introduce here? She's coming back, so it's going to freeze things for a second.
Yeah.
Get her up here. Okay. Are you back, Liana? Let's try. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties, everyone. Stay with us. Type
It
your
just
question.
totally kicked me off, but I'm back.
Okay, welcome back. Okay, so let's go ahead and give quick intros so everybody knows who everyone is. I'll start, and then we'll go to Liana and Teresa, and then we're going to tackle this question, like, what about socialization? Because that's one question I think every homeschooler has to field at one point or another, and we'll just see where the conversation goes, super impromptu and casual. All right, my name is Kelly Edwards, and I am the creator of the 90-Minute School Day, which is a solution for parents who are looking to transition from more of a school-at-home approach to learning with their children and homeschooling to following your child and being more self-directed, having self-directed kids, and having more time in your day so you can get other things done while also being super intentional and connected with your kids in 90 minutes a day. So that's me. I have 3 kids, 15, 9, and 5, all girls, and we live in West Virginia.
Woohoo! That was good, Kelly.
Thanks.
Summary. So my name's Liana. I am a grown unschooler, and so in these rooms, I always try to contribute to the conversation. This energy of, it might be really scary, but I promise you, it can work. You can make this work for your family. I have done lots of different things in my life, including done quite a bit of school as an adult, run businesses. And I unschool my son, who's 6.5 years old. I'm also a foster parent and just always doing 12 billion different things.
And I'm Teresa Wiedrick at Homeschool Mama Self-Care. I help women shed what's not working. And I work as a certified life coach, a homeschool mentor. I do this kind of coaching via writing, podcasting, but my favorite is one-on-one coaching.
That's awesome. Well, we're so happy to have you join us today, Teresa. And tell us how long you've been homeschooling, Teresa.
Well, I officially stopped this year. So
You've graduated.
I know, it's very wild. For all those years that I'd say, well, if I could only, maybe not homeschool, then I could help homeschool parents. I could actually help coach them. I'd have more time. And now I'm there.
You are.
But I have a 22-year-old. My oldest is 22, I think 22, 20, 18, and my youngest is 15. So yeah,
So
it's been a wild
we've got it covered between the three of us and our different backgrounds and how long we've been homeschooling. And Leanna's a grown unschooler, and so we can answer all kinds of questions. So for those of you who are listening and joining us live, feel free to put questions, any kind of questions you have on your mind regarding homeschooling, to take advantage of our time here today. But most importantly, any questions you have specific to socialization, and any questions like that. So where should we go first? Leanna, did you have anything off the top of your head where you wanted to attack this, or?
Well, I think it's really important to frame the conversation. You know, I think for the most part, when people have the socialization questions, it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
It's like everyone knows that if your kids don't go to school, then they won't be socialized properly. There's this like built-in belief we have in society, and also that's a common argument that everyone's just decided that's something to say to homeschoolers.
Yeah.
You know, we all feel that in our head. And so I think the very first thing, if you're the parent actually asking the question for real, like really saying, what about socialization, rather than just that knee-jerk reaction, but what do I do to make sure my kids are socialized properly? I think the question that I always want to ask people is, what are your concerns?
Yeah.
What are you worried about? Are you worried that they aren't going to be able to build relationships in the work world? Are you worried that they're not going to be able to have meaningful personal relationships? Are you worried that people are going to think they're weird? Like, what are you worried about, right? And then you can backtrack from there. But I think so many of us can't even pinpoint what it is that we're concerned about with that big question of socialization. And so I think the first step is really to say, what are we actually talking about here? What's the concern that we have? What is socialization? You know, what do we even mean by it? So I don't know what your guys' thoughts are. Kelly, I know you've had kids in school. And Teresa, you've raised kids all the way to being grown-ups, right? And you now have that frame of reference as well. But I guess, I would ask you guys, what do you think is the biggest real concern about socialization that families have, whether it's a myth or not, but like the one that's real?
Do you want to field that first, Teresa?
Sure. I actually think it's more about us feeling comfortable being outside the cultural box. And it's more about learning how to be outside of that. It's not really about the S question. I don't really think that even oftentimes people that are in the school are concerned about socialization for you as much as they're going, oh, what's it like to be outside of what's normal?
Yeah. And that's super uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to be outside of normal. That's where peer pressure comes into when we're thinking about kind of classical socialization that people value in a school environment, is to navigate that social pressure. Our kids learning how to like not give in to peer pressure. But then when we do something weird as adults, and weird being like calling homeschooling weird, you know, because I think still in society, even though it's outpacing enrollments right now, there's been a lot of articles this fall about how big numbers are going towards homeschooling comparatively to people enrolling in private schools and public schools. So I do think that that's interesting, that the narrative is changing, but still people think it's weird. And what do you guys think about that kind of that interplay of like, here we are concerned about socialization, or saying we're concerned about socialization, but we all kind of as a society, and maybe we should define what society is, you know, we as a society kind of look at adults doing things outside the norm as odd, and you should be questioning everything. But those same adults want their children to question everything and to not go with the mainstream, particularly when we think of high school, is kind of what comes to my mind. Thoughts?
I think that so many grown-ups, and you know, this isn't me, so I don't think that I see this in the world. And you know, one of the observations I always make is like, sometimes I think I see the world a little bit like an anthropologist. You know, like I remember being a little kid, like kind of like watching school kids and like watching playground dynamics from kids that went to school, and just like, you know, every time I went into a new situation, I would sort of like see it and be able to see it from an outsider. And sometimes and not in a bad way, not like I couldn't join in, but I would like analyze, okay, so these are the social rules here. This is what this group expects, and this is what that group expects. Oh, okay. And then kind of fill in. But, I think one of the biggest concerns that people have is they grew up with this feeling of being unsafe to be outside of the norm, right? If they grew up in school or in whatever their environment was in their family, if they were outside the norm, they were an outsider in a socially dangerous way. Like, it was not fun, it was not safe feeling, and they want to protect their kids from that at all costs. And so even your kid, I mean, I know people that are scared their kids are, wearing weird clothes, and their kids, look at their hair, and they want them to say the right things or be interested in the right music or what, because they have those scars for themselves, right? So I really think you hit the nail on the head, Teresa. It's like, what I always say is that homeschoolers are weird. So like in all the ways you want your kid to be weird. Like, you want a kid that follows their own drumbeat. You want a kid that wears what they want because it makes them feel good about themselves and good in their bodies. Like, you want a kid that is willing to stand up for what they think is right because without peer pressure, right?
Right.
We all say we want that.
Yeah.
But when the rubber hits the road, it's scary for us to have
Yeah.
that, right?
And it is, you know what? It is my experience too, because I've had kids go back into school, so I know what that's like. I've had kids go right through homeschooling. I know what that's like. And they're not opposite experiences. What I have seen is that, and I think I've only ever heard Julie Bogart speak to this, but she said something about once a homeschooled kid, always a homeschooled kid. I have seen that to be true. They go into school, they don't think like other kids. They don't see the world the same way. They assume that they'll be spoken to. They assume that they have something to say and someone will listen. They assume that they can go to the bathroom. They assume all sorts of things. Like, they don't understand why we're doing the thing if it's not really serving them. And I've heard that from all of my kids. But there was a time, and I would represent one of my girls who did go all the way through homeschool high school. I remember her saying that, I'm tired of answering the question, why are you not in school today? And so then she just avoided it at all costs because she doesn't want to be understood as weird. Nobody does. And it was uncomfortable. And there was a phase where they recognized they were different in that way. But then fast forward, I think until like 3 months ago or so, I heard something from one of my girls. She said, now I see how, and she didn't use these exact words, of course, but now I see how what you did actually helped me to be really healthy, which is beautiful, because there are ways that I'm confident I contributed to their unhealthy. I can see that too now. But she said, I can see how you contributed to my healthy, sense of self because you were engaging me in the world the way that you were. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, stop, celebrate, woohoo. But that required her to go through a phase of feeling uncomfortable and weird and knowing she was different than everybody else in that way. And I'm sure you experienced that too. Am I guessing you've had that experience? Or
I guess it was never uncomfortable for me. But Good. I was always different than other people, and I think I liked it that way.
Oh, lovely.
So
perfect.
I think that just was my individual personality around it.
Yeah.
And also, I do think that my family culture had this element of, like, we do things all the way, take it or leave it, like almost to like they could have helped soften the edges of it, right? So, but I think because they were so far that way, I think that I just wasn't concerned about, like you said, I expected that I would find people to connect with. I expected I would have good experiences. I didn't expect that I would connect with everybody. I didn't expect everyone to be nice.
Yeah.
Right? So it just sort of rolled off me if there was ever an issue. I didn't really care if there was.
It's that. And I love that, because what you're talking about right there is like how well set up you are with your expectations. And I think that this whole conversation that we're having, I keep hearing the same things over and over again. It's like expectations, feeling safe, and being comfortable or uncomfortable with whatever dynamic of this conversation we're having. So if you're the homeschooling parent and someone has come to you with like, well, what about socialization? Have you thought about that? And, you know, that might be their concern. This is a thing that they've heard, that they've internalized, that they're now asking you. And then you're like, oh, I don't know what to say to this. And I'm seeing in the comments, like, not necessarily the question from this particular homeschooling parent is about defending the homeschool socialization question, but the whole question, am I doing enough? Which is the other like big elephant in the room that homeschoolers fight internally, is how to combat the naysayers and how do we help ourselves with this uncomfortability, right? So it's all about embracing uncomfortability as more of a friend to get curious about, like, why am I uncomfortable right now? What is that saying about the situation more so than the actual question? Does that make sense? Sorry, I kind of went around the train with it.
I think it totally makes sense. And, you know, on that piece of uncomfortability, like, I think it's important to label that as like, you know, uncomfortability, obviously not a word, right? But if it was
it is
a
now.
word,
We just like put it in the dictionary.
it's it should be for the parents, as far as I'm concerned, because I've met a lot of homeschool parents in the last few years that want their kids to be able to fit into group dynamics, like large group dynamics, and they keep taking them out to these environments, and sometimes their kids are not doing well in that environment, and you can see them almost panicking, like, oh, if my kid can't get along here, I'm doing something wrong. And I hear their words saying, I must need to do more of this. I must need to get them out more and get them more uncomfortable and get them used to this way of being. And my approach, certainly my upbringing and my approach to my son, is the exact opposite. You're uncomfortable. You don't like it. You don't like the way these kids are talking to you. You're not sure how to get into the play. You're done trying? Great. Let's get out of here and go read a book.
Yeah.
Let's go to the library. Let's go play by ourselves on the swings. And that, to me, I think is a really different mindset than folks that went to school. Their thought is, if they can't succeed in this group, they're not going to succeed. As opposed to say, maybe you should teach your kid to listen to their gut, to listen that there's nothing for me here. I don't want to be here.
Yeah, but to do that, you have to listen to your own.
Yeah.
And as parents, and as many homeschooling parents, you know, I think you're still the minority, Liana, of being unschooled or homeschooled yourself growing up. Like, I think, you know, Teresa, you were like schooled, what, public education?
All sorts
also?
of stuff. Everything but homeschool.
Same.
Yeah.
So I went to private and public school myself. And so, like, I had to really wrap my mind around, and I never thought I would homeschool, ever.
Me neither. Didn't know it existed.
My best friend growing up was homeschooled. She was the weird homeschooler.
Yeah.
See, you always wanted to hang out with us, though. You always loved.
I know, I did. And deep inside, I was like, these are my people. So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, about like, how as the adult, how as the parents, do I get comfortable enough in my own portion of homeschooling, whether I'm concerned about socialization, whether I'm concerned about answering questions this holiday season about socialization, or I'm really, because I think this mom got into it, I'm really questioning, am I doing enough? Because they're related, right? And I'll bring in this thread from Allison also. I just want to make sure, you know, and everyone put in the comments, I want to make sure we're including you guys in this conversation. So Allison said, she said, it's defining what being social versus socialized. Socialized is more forced socialization, and being social is a wide variety of opportunities, which I think is a great thing to point out, because we can look at socialization as more of like compliance and conditioning, and that's more negative, or we can look at it as learning how to live life with others in a society. And so thank you, Allison, for that. But like, let's get back to like this whole inner working, because that's all, it all ties together. So Teresa, do you want to, like, because I know that you have a big heart for moms and really kind of taking them through this process. Would you like to touch on that first?
Yeah, that is exactly what I'm thinking, is that this is really a discussion about boundaries or identity. And I see boundaries as not just you know, everybody says, just tell people, no, I don't want to talk about that, or this is what I think, so here, just listen to what I think, and I need to assert myself. Boundaries aren't just about that. Boundaries are, who are you and who are you not, really getting clear on who you are, who you're not. And so for me, learning to come up with a plan to address uncomfortable conversations at Christmas or at whatever holiday you celebrate, that's not really the point. The point is, how do you feel safe and comfortable and at ease inside of yourself when somebody's questioning you or when someone's asking you a question, and leaning into who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, rather than trying to live in a defensive mode at all the possible attacks. That's why that John Oliver thing came up, and I'm like, ooh, I want to respond just because it would be fun. I could be spicy, and I really could. And I spent a half an hour with my husband going back and forth on all the possibilities, and my Enneagram type 1 INTJ could think through every logical argument. And I'm like, I just don't care. Let's just be honest. I don't need to be defensive in this response. I just don't care about what he thinks. He's clever. He's got a point. I don't really care about all the details. And I don't want to live defensively, and I don't want other people to feel like they have to be defensive.
Yeah, that's huge. Liana, what do you have to say about that also?
You know, I think particularly around the just developing your own confidence around your choices, a lot of that has to do with just facing the fears that you have head on, right? So, you know, you can do all sorts of exercises. There's all sorts of ways to do this. You can sit down with a pen and paper and set the timer for 4 minutes and just write down what would happen. How could I fail my kids in homeschooling?
Yeah.
Just start writing.
Yeah.
And
just
if you're not
4 minutes?
4 minutes, just keep going. That's what I'm saying, but it's like, I feel
Keep
like
going.
you need to do it for a short time for people to be willing to try, right?
Yeah.
If you say 11 minutes, they're not going to, but you need at least 11 minutes, right? So to get started with it. And then, yeah, just how could I fail my kids? How would this happen? What could I do in this to fail my children? And you will be shocked at the shit that comes out. Oops, sorry. But it's true,
Yeah.
right? Even for me as a grown unschooler, I mean, I'm 40. I had lots of years to be a grown-up before I became a parent. Lots of ways to choose this for my life, right? Lots of examples of how unschooling worked great for me and has given me so many competitive edges in life. And yet still, I can come up with all sorts of fears around homeschooling and unschooling and taking that on and being outside the box, right?
Yeah.
And so most of us carry a ton of that. So whatever we can do just to begin to unearth it and be willing to sit with it, you know, be willing to look at it. And because the truth is that anyone coming at you with questions about your homeschooling challenges, concerns, they just have those fears. And it's probably because they love you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And your kids.
I feel like, the most well-meaning people that really want to have a conversation with you. You know, they're the teachers in your families. They're the therapists, the folks that like work with kids, see what can go wrong, and they want to be there to help and make sure that you guys don't fall because they love you. Yeah. And so if you can start to understand that you can relate to some of those fears that they have a little bit, because you have them also, you've just learned a little bit more, so you can combat those fears easier.
That's so good. Just like what both of you guys are saying, Teresa, you're talking about boundaries, and you are too, Liana, about just talking about and then getting comfortable, because you can't have boundaries with someone and identify where you stop and where they begin unless you know. And so you're inviting us all, Liana, and I think you painted a good picture of like, take a little exercise and write down your fears, because just as homeschooling parents, we have our fears about, you know, having this conversation with someone. Are we doing enough? The parents who have their children in the school system, and Teresa, I didn't realize this about you, but you and I have both had our children in the school system and not in the school system. And we have the same, it's the same. And there's gaps in both things. There's pluses and minuses to both forms of education, and ultimately it comes down to, I think Teresa, you said, comes down to your why. Like, why are you doing this? And when you have that written down and then you write down your fears are valid, and you need to make sure that you kind of are doing your work throughs with your fears, right? But at the end of the day, like, that those fears actually are guides that guide you to what you need to do next, because there's maybe something there that you need to unpack. And then while you were talking, Leon, I had this other thought about like, also know your audience and know the question, because like I was at this a fundraiser a couple weeks ago, and it was a nice dinner table. I was sitting next to a gentleman I didn't know very well. I just met him, and he works in the school system. And so he was talking to me about homeschooling, and then he's told me, he's like, I think homeschooling is great. I loved homeschooling during the pandemic. And again, I'm thinking like, what you were doing in the pandemic is not not the same thing. That was virtual schooling versus homeschooling, but that was his context. And then he said, I would love to do it long term, but I'm concerned about socialization. And I could just tell in the environment I was in that this was not the time. And he wasn't personally attacking me. He was just like letting himself off the hook for something that he'd already made a decision on. And so I was just like, yeah, it's different strokes for different folks. I'm so glad that you found something that works for your family. And we're really enjoying homeschooling. And boom, that's it. Because it was like knowing that this is not a battle.
Yes, don't take all the bait, right? Don't go for all of them. And it's true, like just the other day I had a social worker at my house, the same thing, because I'm a foster parent, and a social worker there, and they were talking about how great homeschooling is, and then their concerns about this and it's so much better than it used to be because there's so many more opportunities for socialization now. This homeschool kids aren't as weird as they used to be, blah blah blah. And I'm just like
there are a lot of weird traditional school kids too.
Well, that's the other thing that I wanted to mention too, is like, I feel like you can really, if you do have a super quirky homeschool kid, because let's be honest, some of us have homeschool kids that are just like, you could not pick them out of a lineup. They just seem super normal for their age, like all the kids in school. They go to a birthday party. They're just like, they just fall right into line because that's their personality. And then some of us have a kid like I have who is like, doesn't wear shoes, is very neurodiverse, in addition to being an unschooled kid. I gotta pick my battles. The hair's crazy because that's the least of my concerns. But I feel like when we have a kid, for whatever reason, that really sticks out as a unique person, like a unique just version of themselves. There's no one else like them. That's a gift to the world for people to begin. And if you can understand and present it confidently and present that kid confidently, you are helping change people's perspectives that everyone deserves to be unique and different. And we don't have to be cookie cutters. Why do we care if our kid is not like the other kids? Let's push these boundaries. And if you can let your super weirdo out there and be happy for them and help them be confident with who they are, that helps all the kids and all the parents. And with their fears, and just makes the world a more accessible place. And I think we need to, it's so hard to be in the school system. I have been a few times as a foster parent in the school system and seeing the push to get kids to all act the same.
Yeah.
And it's damaging. It's damaging to all kids, and so let's not just do that as homeschoolers, try to make our kids like all the other homeschoolers or like all the other school-peered kids. Let's let them be themselves. That's a real radical act.
I'm about to break out into song. I want to sing.
I love singing.
Be weird.
I'm going to sing This Is You by The Greatest Showman. I'm not going to. But you can listen to me sing on my podcast because I have done it twice now. And I don't have a singing voice. But I love that song because that is what we're doing as moms that have this opportunity to take all the responsibilities on, yes, but we are actually allowing our kids to become fully themselves. And if we want that to happen, we have to do that ourselves.
Yes. Good. So true. I love it. Allison in the comments said, we are all weird. That's the thing. Yeah. We all have our thing. You're 100% right, Allison. Thank you for contributing that. And then Annette said, Liana, you're preaching today. And also Annette said earlier, ultimately, you have to find what suits your child best and be flexible. And that's really where it comes down to, is all of us are homeschooling for a certain reason, and it's different for everybody. And that's where your why is. Like, I'm homeschooling for attachment. That's my why. So it's more important to me that I have a strong relationship with my children and they have connected attachment because they're all foster adopted. That's more important to me than them being in the school system and not getting that attachment that they need, that their neurodiversities need, all of the things. So my children, mine, and I am the expert on my children along with my children. And this is what is working for them right now. And should that change and they would be best served somewhere else, like in a traditional classroom, then we will make that move at that time. And so that is just something that I think we all need to just remind ourselves. I'm reminding myself right now, and that we have permission to be like the architect of our lives and to cast the vision and to go along that course until that course no longer serves us. And then we just reassess. And that's what life is. We're constantly adapting. So,
Kelly, I think that point about attachment, I think that is the most important point of everyone's discussion on socialization. So it's not just about us owning our choices, which obviously is very important, but it's also about us recognizing that if we really want to serve our kids and help them be socialized, like be the human beings that we kind of hope they will be as they grow up, kind, able to communicate, all the things, we actually need to connect with them. That's the goal. And that's with every child. I mean, you both have very, I would suggest, I don't really know, but I'm totally guessing I'm right, really challenging scenarios when you have certain stories in kids' backgrounds, and it makes it a whole lot more challenging to parent, and all the more important to connect with them. And for those of us that have neurotypical kids, it's still the most important thing. And when they feel close and connected, and of course it's not seamless, there's days where it's not going to be, but when you're close and connected and they know it and they feel seen and heard, then they go into the world and they be themselves and they see and hear other people, therefore they're socialized.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. Well, we'll continue this conversation in the chat. I'll post this live so everyone can revisit it, share it with your friends, and then let's continue this conversation because I think it's helpful all the time, but especially as we go into the holidays, and we're going to have more conversations with those that are not in our inner circle or our extended family members, that we can kind of tackle these awkward subjects. And thank you so much for joining us today, Teresa. I always love
having me.
You.
It was a pleasure and surprise. It was
I know.
Really
like 10 minutes before this, I'm like, hey, Teresa, want to join us?
Yay!
I might be able to do impromptu. I would like to add that is a point of me as an adult learning how to socialize, because over the last 5 years, I couldn't do all this stuff. Now I'm like, yeah, I've learned. So thank you for asking me.
Thank you for saying yes.
Good. Thank you so much, ladies. Teresa, I'm so glad you joined us today. I always love connecting with you.
Thank you. Me too.
Know that this Sunday time might work for you sometimes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now I'm going to go get out of my pajamas because I'm...
It's Sunday. You get to be in your pajamas. I'm just dressed up because we took Christmas pictures. We got our Christmas tree.
Really?
Yay!
So we did that. Now I've got to go like put lights on it. Nice. But I love all the chat. I love how everyone's connecting. So like, let's keep connecting in the comments. I hate that some people are just now getting here and getting going, but we're here every Sunday. We're trying to make this a repetitive, just homeschool chat at 2 p.m. Eastern is where I am. You're Mountain Time, right, Teresa?
Pacific Standard.
Oh, both of you are Pacific. Okay, you guys are in Canada and then in the U.S. on the West Coast. So it's just about lunchtime for you guys. So, all right. And then we've got someone joining us from Spain, Allison. She's in her PJs. So yeah, we're all a global community, a little society here. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Liana. Thank you, Teresa. You guys have a good day.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.